Time to talk some NFL Week 12. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I'm recording this on Wednesday, November the 22nd, day before Thanksgiving, and we have 3 Thanksgiving Day games this year on NFL Week 12. We also have a Black Friday game for the first time ever. So we'll have 3 games on Thursday, 1 game on Friday, and then we'll get into the Sunday, and the Monday games. Gino Bucola here with you. Eric, I gave him the week off. It's Thanksgiving. I finally said, Eric, you can have a few days off. Eric's got a lot of stuff going on with the family this week, but we will probably be together later in the week for our shows on Friday and on Sunday. More information to come on those. Right now, we are going to look at the betting lines at DRF Sportsbook. And if you are in the state of Iowa, you need to sign up right now. Use the promo code FAST300. It'll get you all the way up to a $300 deposit match bonus. Let's go game by game. I have a few plays, but we'll get you all previewed. We'll get you set up. So however you're playing the game, if you're a gambler, if you're just a fan, if you're someone who plays fantasy or DFS, we'll make sure you're all ready and prepped. Or if you just want to talk some Thanksgiving Day football with your family, and you can have a stat or two to sound, smart, or like some advanced stuff. Because I'm lucky, I'll read a lot, I'll bookmark a lot. Sort of how I do my work. When I'm watching the games, I'll watch everything, take some notes, look at some of the other notes that are out, favorite, bookmark some tweets and some posts. Then after, I'll rewatch the game, and then I'll read some articles. I'll look at the advanced box scores and see if, how my eyes matched what some of the numbers say. And that's when you can really feel like you get a good sense of things. Let's start Thursday. Early game, Packers at the Lions. This one's up to the Lions, -7.5. The Lions are now 8-2. The Lions are 8-2 for the first time since 1962. They're 16-4 in their last 20. Entering week 11, teams that were down 10+ points in the final 5 minutes of regulation were 0-84 this year. Not anymore, because the Lions came back down 12 points with 4 minutes and 15 seconds left to go against the Bears, and they won that game. They played really poorly throughout a lot of the game, particularly Goff with 3 interceptions. Not some great decisions. But down 12, they go 6 plays, 75 yards in 1 minute and 16 seconds. They cut the lead to 5. Then they force a 3-and-out that only took 26 seconds off the clock. They go 11 plays, 73 yards in 2 minutes and 4 seconds to score a touchdown. And then a 2-point conversion puts them up by 3. The first play for the Bears with 22 seconds left, sack, fumble, safety. Now all of a sudden the Lions are up by 5. Go from down 12 to up 5. Amazing. It was also their first win since 2013 when they had 4 turnovers in a game. But Goff was bad. He was graded quarterback 29 out of 31 that took snaps on the week and 3 turnover-worthy plays. Down the stretch, though, final 2 drives, he made some big throws, and he has been in big games, been in big moments. This is nothing new for a guy who's taken a team to the Super Bowl. But the first 3 quarters, he was 3 of 7 on passes under pressure, 2 interceptions. In the fourth quarter, he goes 6 of 8 for 87 yards and a touchdown when under pressure. After the game, he said, quote, "I don't take my job lightly. My job is so much greater than how good I do. It's so much greater than what my stats are or how many touchdowns I can throw. So I'll be there for my teammates and being the best I can on every play and throughout the game, even when things aren't going my way. I'm not playing well as I'd like to early on. How do I find a way to center it myself back to be what my true job is here? Be the best on every play, do everything I can for my teammates." I like that from Goff. He's really matured and grown up. Now their defense struggled again. That's what I'm going to try to attack, because they allowed 183 yards rushing. They allowed the Bears to get 25 first downs and run 71 total plays in the game. So the Lions have to come back after allowing 71 plays being run, chasing Fields all over, and now you got a short week. And remember, the week before, they played the Chargers in that game where it was back and forth and their defense got torched. So that's what's concerning. The Bears had more than 40 minutes of time of possession. So the Lions defense was on the field for 40 minutes in that game. Double the time of possession of the Lions offense. So now that's what worries me. Even Hutchinson, who had a sack in the strip, It was his first one since week 5. Positives for them, though, Gibbs. Since week 7, out of running backs, Gibbs is number 4 in rushing yards, number 2 in yards per carry, number 2 with 5 touchdowns, number 3 in receptions, number 4 in receiving yards, number 1 in receiving first downs. He had his 4th straight game with a rushing touchdown. This is a good football team, man. Shout out to the Lions. They're averaging 27 points a game, 400 yards a game. They've scored in the 40s twice this year, and they've held opponents under 10 twice this year. They had one game against the Ravens when they were a no-show. Other than that, they've been dominant in almost every game. They came back last week and they had a few back and forths, but they've been a very good football team this year. Now we'll go to the Packers. And I'm not laying the number with the Lions. I'm not going to play the Packers plus the 7.5. I would lean that way if you were looking for a place to play, a spot to play. What I am going to play is the Packers team total over 19.5 because of those concerns with the Lions, their defense being on the field for so long, over 40 minutes, over 70 plays, and then having to come back on a short week. And on top of that, the Packers and Love come off of a good offensive game for them last week. Now, it was against a Chargers defense that isn't great, but they actually looked more competent and will now come in and play a really tired and run-down defense that's been struggling lately. Aaron Jones is out for the Packers, but they almost had 400 total yards. They looked good. They got a lot of different players involved, and they've been used to playing without Jones. He only had 4 carries in that game. He got hurt. Reed had 3 carries for 46 yards, also 46 yards receiving. Wicks had 91 yards receiving. Kraft had 32 yards. Musgrave had 28. I think he's going to be out. It was Love's first game with 300 plus passing yards. I'm going to play the Packers team total over 19.5 at minus 106. I think the Packers can score 20 in this game. That's what I feel confident about. But the Lions I feel like a much better team. They're going to be excited for this game. Thanksgiving, good football team. Let's go Packers team total. Moving to the second of the 3 Thanksgiving Day games as we look here at DRF Sportsbook. If you're in the state of Iowa, make sure to sign up. Use our promo code. Scrolling across the bottom. Washington loses last week to the Giants. They've lost both games to the Giants. And now the rumors are that Rivera's really on the hot seat. Dallas is a 12.5 point favorite in this game. Over under 48.5. Washington had 6 turnovers. Even with everything going against them, they were still down by just 5 points late in the game before a pick 6 put them away. Howell was just awful when under pressure. He was 2 of 8, 26 yards and 3 interceptions. He had a negative 23.6 completion percentage over expectation on those throws. They did sack the quarterback 9 times, which was a positive. Prior to that game, they'd never recorded 8 sacks in a game and lost. Got to Tommy DeVito. What's concerning now is that Washington and Howell really struggled when under pressure recently, and that's been the major weakness of Howell, who's actually looked pretty good this year when he's not taking sacks and running into sacks. And now you're going to face a Dallas team that's best in the league in pressure. They come off of a sleepy, flat spot for them. They were never in doubt of losing the game against Carolina, but it was only a 1-possession game late in the third quarter. Following that, they go 75 yards, score a touchdown. They put the game away, scored 9 points off Panthers turnovers. And Dak now, kind of quietly, he's the number 1 graded quarterback this year by Pro Football Focus. He's number 3 on passing grade. How about the stat for Bland, who had another pick 6? He has 4 pick 6s this year. He's the one who's filling in for Diggs. Played a lot last year when they bring in Gilmore and then they move him, and now they had to move him back. He has more touchdowns than any single player on the Browns, on the Colts, on the Falcons, on the Jets, Rams, Saints, and Steelers. The 4th player in history to return 4 interceptions for touchdowns in a single season. And The defensive front allowed 2 different rushers to have more than 50 yards. That's something to keep an eye on for them. They also allowed Carolina to go on a 17-play, 70-yard drive, but they just beat up on bad opponents. They've had 6 wins of 20 or more points this year. This is the type of game where they win by 35. I'm just going to stay away because Washington can move the ball offensively. Sam Howell leads the league in passing yards. So can they do enough to get some garbage time here and get you a backdoor if you play Washington plus 12.5? Sure. But this is where Dallas feasts on these teams. They're just more talented than. Third Thanksgiving Day game, 49ers at the Seahawks. If you can find the +7 or above, it feels like a good spot for Seattle. Mainly because this is a huge game for the division. Seattle's at home. They have a brutally tough schedule coming up. Seattle plays this game. Then they play at Dallas, at the 49ers. So they play them 2 of the next 3 weeks. And then they play the Eagles. They could lose all 4 of those games. This is their best shot right here at home. Divisional rival. Team that you've actually played well again in Seattle. Carroll has had good success against Shanahan in Seattle. And it looks like Geno Smith will be playing in this game. That's huge, obviously, for them. Seattle had last week, they lost to the Rams. They had 3 possessions and 3 long drives in the first half, and then a 1-play drive at the end of the half. So don't even count that. In the 3 drives, they scored on all 3 of them, and they went at least 6 plays on all 3 of them, and at least 43 yards on all 3 of them. But 2 of them were field goals. So they were only up 13-7 at the half, even though it felt like they were really dominant. Start the game 4-4 on third down. Then they go 1 for their next 11 on third down. They just can't move the ball at all, though, in the second half. Punt, 3 plays, 8 yards. They kick a field goal on a 13-yard drive. They go 4 plays, 11 yards, punt. 3 plays, 1 yard, punt. 3 plays, 7 yards, punt. 3 plays, -1 yard, interception. 7 plays, 38 yards, and they missed the field goal. And late in the third quarter, Geno Smith got crushed by Aaron Donald. Locke comes into the game. He throws a bad interception that ends up leading to a field goal that put the Rams ahead. And they didn't earn a first down with Locke in the game. Seattle was down by 1 with 1 minute and 30 seconds left to go. Geno Smith comes in for the final drive, and he moves Seattle down the field. And instead of trying to get closer, they were just content with attempting a 55-yard field goal, which went wide right. They had already made field goals of 54 and 52 on the day, but Pete Carroll just got a little conservative there. It was a really ugly game as far as penalties are concerned for both the Rams and the Seahawks. 12 penalties for 130 yards for Seattle. It was the most in the NFL this season in penalty yardage and the most for Seattle since 2018. Kenneth Walker got hurt. That was something to monitor for them. That's not going to be easy. And we got to talk about the 49ers and just how good they look when everyone's healthy and everything's going well for them. Purdy was awesome. You'll hear all over about the perfect passer rating he had. And he had a career-high passer rating last week. It was the first perfect passer rating for San Fran since Joe Montana in 1989. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 21 of 25, 333 yards, 7 of 10 on passes of 10-plus air yards for 213 yards and 2 touchdowns. He leads the NFL in EPA for dropback on passes of 10 air yards this year. The defense played well. They allowed only 287 total yards, just 66 on the ground. McCaffrey, he has now played in 21 regular season games with San Francisco, 24 touchdowns. Only one other player in history has more touchdowns through their first 21 games with a new team. That was Randy Moss with the Patriots when he scored 25. Now, where they've struggled recently, red zone offense. They were 4th in the league first 6 weeks. Since then, week 7 and on, they're just 6 of 14. That would put them at 26th in the NFL during that stretch. Like last week, they went 2 of 4. Lost Hufanga out for the season with a torn ACL. +7 or above, I'd lean Seattle here on the Thursday nightcap. 3 games on Thanksgiving Day, Thursday. Black Friday, we've got the Dolphins at the Jets, and we've got Tim Boyle starting for the Jets, who benched Zach Wilson. Yeah, he looked really bad again. But now you're going to bring in Tim Boyle. His career touchdown to interception ratio at Connecticut in college, 1 touchdown, 13 interceptions. At Eastern Kentucky, 11 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. In the NFL, 3 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. You even wonder sometimes how someone like this is in the NFL or even got drafted. Nonetheless, he's starting. And it can't be much worse than what we've seen for the Jets. They had 155 total yards last week. They did actually score a touchdown for the first time in 41 drives, and they missed the 2-point conversion. They've scored 3 touchdowns in their last 65 possessions. The Jets fumbled away the opening possession, but they were able to force a field goal. And then even after 3 possessions where they didn't move the ball, they were only down 9-0. The Bills had it 4 times and only scored 9 points. Then they fumbled. I mean, they had gained 18 yards on their first 14 plays last week. They were only down 10 points at the half because their defense kept trying, and Wilson took some bad sacks on the first 2 drives of the second half, and then boom, they're done with him. He got benched. It's not all his fault. The offensive line has been terrible. They allowed 6 sacks in that game, and then Becton gets carted off the field last week with a high ankle sprain. The Jets offensive coordinator, Hackett, in his last 24 games before Sunday, he was the head coach of the Broncos last year and now the offensive coordinator here. His teams have averaged 15.7 points per game. Denver was 25th in total yards when he was in charge. The Jets are 29th. Both of those teams are last in the league in third down conversions. It's not good. The problem is that the Dolphins is a 9.5-point favorite on the road here. They had 3 turnovers and a missed field goal in the first 3 quarters last week. Then in the fourth quarter, they go 3 and out each of their first 2 drives. Hill was incredible. He had that one slant play where he just outruns everybody across the middle of the field. He finished with 10 catches, 146 yards. He's the first player in the Super Bowl era to have 1,200 plus receiving yards in a team's first 10 games of the season. It was his 10th career game, which he had at least 10 catches, 140 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Him, Jerry Rice, Andre Johnson tied for the most ever with those numbers. This was actually the first time when the Dolphins won a game this year where they've scored 20 or fewer. And they're 2-0 when they've committed 3+ turnovers in the game. They were lucky to win that game against the Raiders. They played a team that couldn't pick up a first down for 31 minutes of game time. And the Dolphins did not score a touchdown in the second half. They couldn't run the ball, only 3.5 yards per carry. A-Shane got hurt again. But a positive, the defenses look better. Ramsey's back and healthy. And they forced turnovers now in 4 straight games. But I like the Jets at anything over 9.5 here, and 10 I'm definitely in on. Let's go on the Jets side here on the Black Friday game. Panthers at the Titans. Crazy stat for Tennessee. I hadn't realized this until hearing it and then looking it up. They've only played 3 games in their home stadium this year, and they've won all 3 of them. They played a game in London, and then 6 road games where they're 0-6 on the road. They've been outscored 140-70. But they have 5 home games left, including this one against Carolina, who's a bad football team. Carolina had only 187 total yards and just 77 net yards passing last week. The defense actually played pretty well, holding Dallas to only 311 total yards. And they went on a 17-play, 70-yard drive that took 8 minutes and 58 seconds, ended with a touchdown. And at that point of the game, it was the end of the third quarter, 2 minutes left to go in the third, and they're only down by 7. And then Dallas gets the ball and goes 75 yards in 3 minutes, scores a touchdown. And then the first play, Carolina gets the ball back, they throw a pick 6, and all of a sudden they're down by 20 with 3 minutes and 11 seconds of game time gone by. They go from down 7 to down 20. Then they get the ball back, Young fumbles it, and Cowboys kick a field goal, and boom, it's even worse. Panthers had 8 penalties for 90 yards. They had 2 unnecessary roughness penalties after stops on 3rd and long in the first half. Just one of those would have ended what was a touchdown drive for Dallas. Now the owner is thinking about firing their head coach, Reich, who just got hired this year. So he became the owner. He fires Rivera after 20 games or 28 games. Then he lets go of the interim coach at the end of the year. He fires Matt Rule after 38 games. Rivera had coached longer than that, but he'd only been the owner for, I guess, that period of time. Then Matt Rule, 38 games, he's gone. Then Wilkes, who does a good job as the interim coach at 6-6, he lets him go. And now he's thinking about firing this one. He also owns the Charlotte FC Major League Soccer team. They made the playoffs this year. They fired their coach. They fired their coach last year. So second year in a row, they fired their coach. He's just firing coaches all over the place. These organizations that he owns. Yeah, the number here, I just don't like it either way. Carolina, I'm not excited to get in on this one. Tennessee, it feels like they will play a lot better here. I mean, the offensive line continues to struggle. They can't look as bad as they've possibly looked. They couldn't run the ball at all. They're 19th in rushing yards per game, just over 100. Henry's had 24 yards and 38 in his last 2 games. And then that puts more pressure on a rookie quarterback now who started 3 games. They don't have a ton of playmakers for him either. It's just not a great situation. They had 12 first downs on 9 total drives and 235 total yards. No strong opinion in that one for me. As we move to Jags and Texans, this one's interesting. The Texans are like a plus 1.5 point dog now. Jags favored slightly on the road here, over under 48.5. So the Texans are the first team to exceed their win total. Going into the season, their total was set 5.5. They're now 6-4. And they won a game against the Cardinals they probably shouldn't have won. They had 3 turnovers, 3 Stroud interceptions. But even in a game where he wasn't as sharp, he still finished with 300 yards passing, and he completed 27 passes. There have been 11 times this year a player has thrown for 250 yards and in one half, and he's done it 3 times. And 8 other players have done it once each. They had a fast start. They gained 60 yards, the Texans did, on each of their first 5 first-half drives, but they were only able to score on 3 of them, and then they got shut out in the second half. They've been leaning on Singletary. He had 22 carries for 112 yards. It was the first time in his career that he's had back-to-back 100-yard rushing games, and you got to give credit to the offensive line. He was only tackled for a loss twice, and he had 4 carries of 10-plus yards. Now, on the Jags side, I was impressed with what I saw from them. They bounced back. They were up by 13 at the half, and then they just coasted. They won the time of possession by almost 13 minutes. Ridley was an obvious focus. They got him a lot more involved. 9 targets, 7 catches, 103 yards, 2 touchdowns. Lawrence just looked smarter. The decision-making was better. He used his legs in the red zone, a couple rushing touchdowns. He had a nice week overall. 3 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays, graded quarterback number 5 on the week. He was 6 of 8 on 15-plus air yards, which they had not been throwing down the field at all earlier this year. And it was the first time in like a month where he seemed not limited. Apparently, he was dealing with a little bit of an injury. So I'll stay away from this one, but in a positive way, because I actually think the Jags are going to trend up the second half of this year and just play better. Their record's good, but they haven't played all that well recently. I think their offense will look better. And the Texans beat up the Jags on the road earlier this year. Should be a really good football game, an important game, and these two teams could both make the playoffs. We got the Patriots at the Giants. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get involved, but the Patriots and Mac Jones are a 3.5 point favorite on the road this year against anyone. Even Tommy DeVito and the Giants. Look, the Giants gained 6 turnovers last week, which is crazy. They won a game where they only had 13 first downs and 120 total yards less than their opponent. They lost time of possession by 10 minutes. They got sacked 9 times, but they forced 6 turnovers. They only had 10 turnovers coming into the week, and they forced 6 last week, did the Giants. They even allowed 9 sacks in that game and won. But they leaned on Barkley, who had 140 total yards on 18 touches. And DeVito was graded quarterback number 9 on the week. He was 18 of 26, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 246 yards. I just can't back the Patriots as more than a field goal favorite on the road against anyone this year, even this Giants team. Patriots come off a bye. They had 340 total yards, but only 6 points last time we saw them on 68 total plays. They were 0 of 4 in the red zone. They had more total yards, more first downs, more yards per play, won the time of possession by almost 9 minutes, but 0 of 4 in the red zone, 5 penalties, turnovers, and they had a bad interception with 4 minutes left to go in the game, and they benched Mac for the final drive. He got sacked 5 times in the first half of that game. He got hit 9 times. Felt like he was under pressure the whole game. 2-8, tied for the worst start in the Belichick era. Even their special teams has been bad, which was always a calling card for the Patriots. One point, they didn't have a punt returner in the first half. They missed a short field goal. They allowed a 42-yard kick return. They're number 30 in special teams DVOA. But they have 5 one-score losses on the year. I'd lean the Giants plus the 3.5 at home in here. You've got 2 teams coming off a bye in the Saints and the Falcons. The Falcons are now going to go back to Ritter. He took over after Heineke got hurt, and Heineke wasn't much better than Ritter. And it kind of feels like Ritter has more upside in watching this game. I like Atlanta in this game at a pick'em at home. They've lost 3 straight games in 4 of the last 5. All of those could have and should have been wins. All of them were by 8 points or less. Maybe they start handing it off to Bijan a little bit more now after the bye. He had 22 carries for 95 yards last we saw him. And that Atlanta didn't turn the ball over there, but they just weren't moving at all down the field. They have to have figured some things out. They had 2.9 net yards per pass play against a Cardinals defense that was one of the worst against the pass last we saw. For the Saints, we're not sure. It looks like Carr practiced on Wednesday. Either Carr or Jameis here. I have not been impressed with the Saints a lot of this year. Against the Vikings, they were down big. They come back with Jameis coming in the game, and after the Vikings missed a field goal, the Saints were within 8. They got the ball back 3 more times, though, and went 3 and out. They just haven't been sharp. And I've been high on the Falcons coming into the year. They should have a much better record than they are now. I think this is a big spot for them. This is a really big game in the division here. Let's go Falcons in the pick'em. We go to Steelers at the Bengals. Steelers are a slight 1-point favorite on the road here. Steelers fired their offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, which is a huge deal because they do not fire coaches in season at all. Then the news for the Bengals, they're going to be without quarterback Joe Burrow for the rest of the year. It'll be Jake Browning starting for them. On the offensive side for the Steelers, it's kind of weird. Some of their advanced metrics look better than you think when you watch their offense, which has not been good. But they've played the toughest schedule of defenses this year based on DVOA, and they don't turn the ball over a ton. They only had 12 first downs in that last game and only 249 total yards. They went 3 of 14 on third down. They have to just feed Warren. He had a 75-yard touchdown run. He accounted for more than 25% of the total offensive production for the day. And since week 7, he's averaging 8 yards per rush and only 9.2 carries per game at 73 yards per. Give him the ball more. Adios, Canada. The Steelers were never better than 23rd in yards or 21st in points under him. This year, they ranked 28th in both yards and points. They're 31st in passing yards, 31st in touchdowns, dead last in touchdown passes last year. They've generated fewer than 400 yards in 58 straight games his entire time as a play caller. Last week, they had 64 total yards and 15 passing yards in the first half. It was the second time this year they had 0 points and less than 70 yards in the first half of a game. I think by him just being out of there, they're going to look better. The Steelers have a negative 29-point differential despite being 6-4. One of two teams in the league with winning records and a negative point differential. Okay, so Canada's out now. Now it's on you, Pickett. This offense is going to get a little better just by process of elimination. I think you'll have some more creativity there. Pickett, over the last couple years, out of 41 qualified quarterbacks who register for these categories, Pickett ranks out of 41, 35th in EPA per dropback, 35th in success rate, 38th in explosive play rate, 30th in air yards per attempt, 17th in inaccurate rate. Pressure's on you now. And the pressure's on Browning for the Bengals. He'd played a total of 4 snaps before needing to come into the game. Now, what's a positive for him? He did run a lot of offense in training camp with the first string because Burrow was hurt coming into the year. So he prepped with the first string offense a lot. So he's somewhat familiar with them and now has a week. It's not as if he was a complete backup. We're talking about this on the Pro Football Focus show. And it's a bummer for the Bengals because a few weeks ago, you feel like their season's completely starting to change. They play really well in a couple spots. They beat San Francisco. And in this game last week against the Ravens, the Bengals were up 10-7 with 5 minutes and 50 seconds left to go in the half. And then Burrow gets hurt. And then following that, it's like it deflates the entire team. They allow back-to-back touchdowns. And all of a sudden, going into the half, they're down 21-10. And Burrow's done for the year. And it's an offense that's built around his decision-making and his ability to see down the field. And now they're just going to have to make this thing a lot easier for Browning. Chase only had 2 receptions in that game. It was tied for his second fewest in a game in his career. The defense has been disappointing. They needed more from them last week, and they allow 400 total yards and 6.8 yards per play. At one point, the Ravens scored 4 straight times when the offense really needed some help from the defense there. In the last couple of years, they've been one of the least penalized teams in the league, the Bengals, but last week they had 9 penalties. And now they've got one of the toughest remaining schedules based on opponent win percentage. And they're 11th in the playoff standings, and they've lost every division game they've played so far. I actually like the Steelers in this spot coming off the fired coach bounce. It's basically a pick 'em here. Give me the Steelers looking a little better on offense without Canada. Tampa and the Colts. Colts a 2.5-point favorite in this game over under 44. You've got Tampa coming off the loss to San Francisco. They were only down by 6 at the half, but the first possession of the second half, they punt. San Francisco scores a touchdown. They punt. San Francisco scores a touchdown. You go from being down 6 to down 20. And in the fourth quarter, they're down 13. They moved inside San Francisco's 15-yard line 2 different times, but couldn't score either time. The real key when I'm watching Tampa and I watch them back, and why, as the season's gone on, they've struggled more, they cannot run the ball at all. They had 66 yards rushing. They only had 18 carries and 3.7 yards per carry. They were dead last in rushing yards per game, averaging 76.9. And because of that, it forces them to pass the ball. They had to throw it 45 times last week. And you just become one-dimensional and easier to defend. They also had 4 starters leave the game because of injuries, and their pass defense got torched. They allowed a perfect passer rating to Brock Purdy and some big plays. They're now 25th in dropback EPA allowed and 24th in dropback success rate allowed. Colts are kind of sneaky in this playoff hunt. They entered week 10 as the only team this year to score 20-plus points in each game. They only scored 10 in that game against the Patriots. They still come out with the victory. They had 264 yards of total offense and only 5 of 13 on third down, but a couple of big timely plays, and they took advantage of a struggling Patriots team. Their defense was putting pressure on the quarterback throughout. 5 sacks in the first half and 9 hits on the QB. Yeah, this one's like a stay away for me. I'd probably lean Colts, but no real strong opinion here. We move to the Browns at the Broncos. How about Denver quietly now has won 4 games in a row. They are up to 5-5, and they are big time in the playoff picture. The Browns come off that really, really big win for them with DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He had to throw the ball 43 times. He completed 24 passes, but only 165 yards. He did lead a 50-yard touchdown drive in the first quarter, and then on a field goal drive late in the first half, he helped put Cleveland up 10 points. Then they were able to coast. In the second half, they only had 58 yards, but then on the final drive, they go 8 plays, 48 yards, and kick a field goal to win the game. Maybe not in this game, but soon they're going to need to do more offensively because they can lean on their really impressive defense, Cleveland can, but they only averaged 3.5 yards per play. And, they only had 1 penalty and 1 turnover. But they're going to have to take more shots down the field. The Steelers started stuffing the box and trying to force them to push the ball down the field. DTR only threw 2 passes over 10 yards down the field all day, and the average depth to target was 3.6 yards. It was their 3rd win of the year for the Browns, where their starting quarterback didn't throw a touchdown pass. And they've also had 3 different starting quarterbacks win a game for them this year. Yeah. Before that final drive, though, things got ugly for a while. DTR was 7 of 20 for 28 yards and an interception in the 3rd and 4th quarter. And they only had 4 first downs in the second half. The furthest they'd gotten was the 36-yard line for Pittsburgh. But wow. That defense, 7 of 10 games this year, they've held the opposing offense under 300 yards. The Steelers only crossed midfield 3 times out of 13 possessions. And it was the 4th time this year the Browns have held an opponent to 10 or fewer points. It's not like they were getting fantastic quarterback play from Watson, right? The last 12 games with Watson on the Browns, 59% completion percentage, 5% below average. Passer rating was 81.7. League average is 89. He was way below that. 14 touchdown passes and 12 starts. Sam Howell of Washington has 14 since October the 1st. And when Watson next plays in a game in September, it will have been 12 games that he's played in the last 3 years and 8 months. Now, on the Broncos side, their defense was so bad the first 5 games that they still rank dead last in metrics. Even though since week 6, their defense is actually 10th overall. In weeks 1 through 5, they were twice as bad as any other team based on DVOA, and more than twice as bad as any defense has been since then. But they're kind of quietly improving. And Russell Wilson, he's completed 69% of his passes this year, puts him on pace for a career high, on pace to throw for 3,500 yards. He's already thrown for 3 more touchdown passes than he did all of last year, and he has 7 fewer interceptions. He's only got 4 so far this year. He's 4th in the league in passer rating. Since week 6, he's 3rd in EPA per pass on first down, and Peyton has been drawing up really creative stuff for first down. Last week for the Broncos, 7 different receivers caught multiple passes. They struggled moving the ball through a lot of the night, though. It was a game where they kind of got lucky because the 3 turnovers from the Vikings. Going into the final drive, they were only 1 of 11 on third down and 0 of 4 in the red zone. But all 3 turnovers they created resulted in field goals. They end up kicking 5 field goals in the game, and they win that one. Kind of a stay-away game for me here. No real strong opinion. We move to the Rams and the Cardinals. Rams are quietly in playoff positioning now. They have some winnable games left. At Arizona here, home for the Browns with DTR. Games against Washington, New Orleans, and at the Giants. I'm not saying they win all of those games, but they're winnable games. And the Rams have had good success against the Cardinals over the last few years. The Cardinals, while they kept the game close, I don't think they looked really all that good when you dive into the game and went down to down. They were just 1 of 4 on 4th downs, including missing all 3 of them late in the game where they were only down 1 possession. They were 3 of 10 on third down. And I was a lot more impressed with what the Rams did late in that game. They were down 13-0. They end up scoring a touchdown right before the end of the half to keep them in the game. 3 straight punts and an interception to start the second half. They're a bit lucky that Seattle was only able to kick a field goal during that time. Now they're down by 9. And they only had 267 total yards, just 4.5 yards per play, but 144 in the fourth quarter. And that was more than the first 3 quarters combined. The defense only allowed 87 total yards in the second half. Even with some strange play calling late in the game, a pass on second down, they left Seattle with 1:31 left to go in the game. And they got lucky that Seattle missed a late field goal. A couple things that work for them. Play action. They used play action a season high, 33% of their dropbacks. Monitor the Cup injury. He had to leave the game with an injury. The 35th career fourth quarter comeback for Stafford. He is 6th all time in fourth quarter comebacks. Brady, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, Matt Stafford. I like the Rammies in here in a tight one. Pick'em game on the road. I think they can get back into a spot where they'll be fighting for a playoff spot. I don't think they're that good of a team, but I think with the schedule ahead, if Stafford's there, their defense can make some plays. Oh, Geno Smith put that hit on, or Aaron Donald put that hit on Geno Smith last week. Oh, that was brutal. Let's go Sunday to the Bills and the Eagles. I wanted to play against both of these teams this week because the Eagles, they keep winning games where they don't look fantastic. And even by the advanced metrics, they're not great. They just crept into the top 10 of DVOA. I think they are number 10. Defensively, they're not great against the pass. They struggle in spots against the run. And their offense is really up and down. They only had 78 total net yards of offense at halftime, and 70 of those came on one touchdown drive. After 3 quarters, they only had 146 total yards. But the defense forced 2 red zone turnovers in that game against the Chiefs. And Hurts only finished with 150 yards passing, 1 interception. It was a big Devontae Smith game. 6 catches, 99 yards. A.J. Brown only had 1 catch for 8 yards. They made adjustments in the second half. Eagles allowed 121 rushing yards in the first half. They gave up 47 in the second half. Now on the Bills side, they get a big win, score 32 points. It's the most the Jets defense has allowed since 2021. But they gained 4 turnovers from the Jets. And it was not a fast start for the Bills. They gained a fumble on the first play of the game. They go negative 9 yards on 4 plays. They have to kick a field goal. Then on their second drive, they go 14 plays, 6 minutes. Again, they have to kick a field goal. Another long drive on their third possession, 9 plays, 65 yards, field goal. They punt on their fourth possession. And think about that. So now after 4 possessions, they had 9 points. They're lucky they were playing the Jets because other good teams would have probably scored something. 2 touchdowns would have gotten you 14. 2 touchdowns out of your 4 possessions. A touchdown and a field goal would have gotten you 10. Now, you look at this game individually. The Bills had their second worst success rate of the season. Second worst passing success rate. Third worst rushing success rate. Second worst rushing EPA. We saw the big numbers and it looks like they blow them out. And oh yeah, they fired their offensive coordinator and now the offense looks great. That was not what I saw watching that game. Not what the box score will tell you. At the straight 3, I'd lean Philly here. Wanted to fade both of these teams at 3.5. It was no man's land for me. At 3, I think Philly's the better, more well-balanced team. I still have a lot of the same concerns I had about the Bills. Give me the Eagles in here. Bills are number 1 in the league in variance. That's what we know about them. Moving to the Chiefs, and the Raiders lost last week, but they played very well in that game. They played hard. Their defense put up a good effort. They allowed 422 total yards, but they forced 3 turnovers, and the Dolphins only had 20 points. They just couldn't run the ball at all. 14 carries, 39 yards for Jacobs, and as a team, just 36 rushing yards. That forced them to have to throw the ball 41 times and 3 turnovers. And those turnovers hurt them. They had 3 interceptions in this game. They ended up getting the ball back 4 times in the fourth quarter with a chance to tie the game, and they had to punt, then turnover on downs, then back-to-back interceptions. And they didn't have a first down in the second or third quarter. They went 31 minutes and 26 seconds of game time without a first down. But they kept fighting. They really did. Now they're at home. They're playing a Chiefs team that's a 9-point favorite on the road. Look, this Chiefs team should not be favored by 9 in this spot because their offense isn't good enough. We saw their receivers were dropping passes all night long. Similar to week 1 against the Lions, it wasn't Mahomes' fault. He was putting the ball on target, drop after drop after drop after drop on great passes. The Chiefs lead the league in drops with 26. 21% of Patrick Mahomes' incompletions this year have been drops. And 2 of those drops have been 2 losses for them. It was the 3rd straight game where they have not scored a point after halftime. They've been shut out on their last 16 second half drives. They are the lowest scoring team in the second half of games this year. In his career, in the first 101 starts, there were 2 times where Patrick Mahomes' Chiefs teams got shut out in the second half, twice out of 101 starts. It's now happened 3 times in a row, the last 3 times. They are awesome in the first half. Outscore opponents 155-60. The Chiefs had 7 more first downs, 100 more total yards. They ran 20 more plays. They were better on 3rd and 4th down. They won the time of possession by 4 minutes. But the drops, 2 turnovers, going 2 of 4 in the red zone, 7 penalties, 5 of them in the second half. That cost them the game. And it was only the 3rd time they've ever lost a game where they had a double-digit lead with Mahomes in that game. Their offense is number 15 in success rate. Even Andy Reid, he doesn't feel confident because they were up 17-14 in the game, 8 minutes and 56 seconds left to go. It's 4th and 4 at the Eagles' 39, and they punt. And then the Eagles go 89 yards and score a touchdown to take the lead. The Raiders plus the 9, they're playing harder. This is the great spot where if they're down by 14, you can get them for a garbage time backdoor cover here against the Chiefs team that's not been blowing a lot of teams out, and their offense hasn't been all that incredible. 2 games left Sunday Night Football. We've got the Ravens at the Chargers. Ravens are a 3.5-point favorite on the road in here. I'm going to give you just a world of stats and info about the Chargers, and most of it's negative. And then I'm going to tell you why I'm playing the Chargers plus the 3.5. Chargers should have won that game last week. Keenan Allen had 2 bad drops. Eckler fumbles a touchdown. Quentin Johnson drops a wide open pass that probably would have been a touchdown. They have a DPI on a 3rd and 20 that gives the opposition an automatic first down, the Packers. They were 1 of 4 in the red zone. Their defense allowed 6 completions of 20-plus yards. That was tied for the most of any team this week. The Packers only had 26 completions of 20-plus yards before that game all year. Green Bay was 4th on the league in EPA per dropback of all quarterbacks on the week. The Chargers have allowed the highest explosive play rate in the league over the last 2 years for a defensive coach. They're 29th in defensive DVOA, 8th in offensive DVOA.